Cowabunga! Today on Outside the Box Reviews, we are looking at the Playmates Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles action figures. Now, half of what you see before you are the original vintage figures, and the other half are the 25th anniversary re-releases of the vintage figures. But virtually at the end of the day, they are all the vintage mold, the vintage accessories, all that good stuff. And this makes up my vintage Turtles collection. So we're gonna go back to the 80s and take a look at all these action figures. Ninja Turtles, I've probably said it a few times before on this channel, it was my thing as a kid. It was my absolute favorite TV show. I had tons of the toys, the vehicles, all kinds of stuff. Still, every day when I go to work, I bring a Ninja Turtles water bottle that I have from back then that probably is full of plastic that I probably shouldn't be drinking out of, but I still use it. And at the end of the day, I think that me being a huge Turtles fanatic was probably destiny, because I've read online that the meeting between the original creators of the Turtles and Playmates toys, which spawned both the action figure line and the TV series, happened on the same day I was born. So the Ninja Turtles action figure line is exactly as old as I am. But let's jump right in and take a look at the Turtles. And every vintage Turtle comes with his weapon rack. And this is the most intact one I still have, so I figured I'd use this as an example. This is what came with Donatello. And you originally would have your primary weapons attached to the sides here, so you could see his extra bow staff is still connected. The one that he has as his weapon is out, but they all come with the same extra weapons: 2 throwing stars, the little spade-shaped blade, what I always called the pizza slice looking blade, and then the hook type weapon. And there are pegs on this. There's little feet, so it can kind of stand on its own sometimes. And I guess you could theoretically peg or hook the weapons onto this and have them use it as weapon storage in your display, but it never really worked out too well for me. But basically the same thing with every turtle. And first up, we're going to take a look at Donatello, because he is the most vintagey of my vintage Turtles. His primary weapon here is the bow staff. It's all just one brown color, but there is some great sculpting detail. You can see the wood grain and all the wraps through the middle of it. So it is very nicely done. All the Turtles have weapon storage on their belts, so he has the little sheath on there that you could just slide the weapon right into. You kind of have to thread it through because there are holes all the way through it, but once you get it in there, great weapon storage. Now I say Donatello is the most vintagey of my vintage figures because the initial release of the Turtles had soft heads, and you could see here, Donatello has a very squishy head here. You could kind of squish it around. I don't know why this happened. I don't know if it was a manufacturing error or if it was they were worried kids were going to hurt themselves with it, but that's just kind of a sign that you have one of the first releases from what I've read. And it's a little odd because there's no real reason for it to be squishy, and then it makes the paint color of the head not quite match the body. But just as an example of that feature, I'm kind of glad I have it on one of my Turtles. Donatello, of course, has his purple bandana. It's tied off in the back. He's got his white eyes. He has his teeth exposed on both sides, but the middle's closed up. I like these kind of a darker olivey green. He has purple armbands, his muscles, the veins running through his arms, pretty muscular legs as well, the knee pads. We've got the one flat foot and the one foot raised up, kind of in an action pose. Of course, has his shell on the front, and on the back there are some scratches in the back to kind of simulate damage. And this whole rubber belt on here is removable. There's 2 tabs in the back here that you can undo, and then a tab right here where the letter is and the tie of the belt. So you can take that and actually just remove that and have naked Donatello if you felt the need to. We can see here without the belt, there is an indentation around his waist where the belt goes. So it is a little weird looking without it, but not too shabby. For articulation, every single one of these Turtles is exactly the same. We have a swivel cut at the base of the neck, rotation at the shoulder, rotation just below the elbow, so kind of forearm rotation. And we have ball joints at the hips, which is pretty limited because of the shell shape and everything, but you do get some movement. You can kind of make them kick or whatever. We do have a peg hole at the bottom of the one foot as well. Next up, we're going to look at Michelangelo. Now, in buying Michelangelo loose on eBay, the biggest issue I had was finding one with complete nunchucks. He originally came with 2, and the best I could do for the price I was willing to pay was 1. A lot of these break in the middle because people try to put them on the belt storage for them, and it's not very flexible plastic and it tends to break. So I'm going to be very gentle with this. this, the only one I got, and I'm just gonna leave it alone. So a little flawed in the weapon design here, but it looks decent. Same sculpting kind of details. We have the wraps around here and just a straight piece of plastic in the middle. So as I said, you could store it on his belts. Definitely pegs into these little holes just fine, but I'm just very worried about breaking it trying to actually store it back here, so I'm not going to. As far as the body goes, Mikey is virtually identical to Donatello, except for the fact that they gave him his right foot being flat and his left foot being in the action pose, which is the reverse of Donatello. The head is a different sculpt. We just have the teeth on the one side and kind of a closed mouth for the rest. The bandana also flares out in a little different way here. Of course, he's got the orange. He has a lighter green skin tone, kind of still a dark green, but not as olivey as Donatello's. His belt is also different, just being the wraparound belt, no shoulder pieces to it. The M in the center, same articulation, same sculpting, pretty much the same figure. This one, however, does have a hard head. Next up is Raphael, and this is one of the 25th anniversary re-releases. Now these came out, obviously, the 25th anniversary of Ninja Turtles. They were in packaging very similar to the vintage box, but they also came with a DVD including an episode of the original series on it. So pretty cool run. They did quite a few characters, but all the popular ones sold out really quickly, and things like April O'Neil were left to peg warm forever, and only recently did they try to bring back this whole idea, and they've been doing it at Toys R Us. But of course I already had my figures by that point, and I never found Michelangelo. Raph has his size, which are very nicely sculpted, some kind of wrapping detail here in the middle, just the general shape of the side, but really well done. And he also has the triangular blade on him right now because he actually has weapon storage for that. He has kind of this groove piece in the back that you could stick that in, which isn't really accurate to the comic or the cartoon or anything like that, but it's there, so I might as well use it. Size stored very nicely in the front of his belt, which I really like. They are a little bulky for him, but it works. Once again, same basic body all over again. Though I did just notice another difference. With Raphael and Donatello, you could see the hand kind of curves back here. Michelangelo has his hand curving inward, so there is a slight variant with the hands themselves, which is interesting. I didn't notice that before. Raph, however, has 2 flat feet, so a different leg positioning than the other 2, but virtually the same figure. He's got all of his teeth bared, which I think is very fitting for his character. His bandana is tied a little more to the side than in the back, and of course the belt is different. Next up we got Leonardo, also from the 25th anniversary collection. Leonardo has his trademark katanas, pretty nicely done, no wrappings like the other ones have, but a very more intricate looking sword hilt here. My only problem really is you can see right here where the blade connects to the hilt, there is some stress marks there, so this is definitely something that's a little on the flimsy side, very potential to break, but not bad looking. They of course will store on his back, and I always loved the fact that he has the X back here, that you can actually cross the swords behind him. I also thought that was a very cool look for Leonardo. Figure itself, once again, very much the same. His hand does curve outward, so Michelangelo is the only one with that different arm. He has the same leg position as Donatello with his right leg up in that striking action pose. His belt's very similar to Donatello as well, with the straps going over his shoulders, but of course a different holster in the back going on. His bandana looks similar to Raph, a little more off to the side. His mouth is basically the reverse of Michelangelo, having the teeth on the opposite side here, but something about the way they did his eyes, he just kind of looks sad and a little scared. Doesn't really work for Leonardo. Of course, the leader has to be the one looking kind of derpy. So at the end of the day, there's no real way I could give these guys a fair, unbiased review. These things are my childhood. This is the action figures I probably played with the most growing up. Yeah, eventually Power Rangers and X-Men and stuff like that kind of replaced them, and Batman pushed him aside, Star Wars pushed him aside, but Ninja Turtles will always have a huge spot of nostalgia in my heart. And like I said, there's no way I couldn't recommend these, but of course, they're not recommendable by today's standards as action figures. If this 25th anniversary collection wasn't a 25th anniversary collection, were just action figures released at that time, and there's no nostalgic basis to go off of, they honestly probably wouldn't get a recommend. They don't look a lot like the cartoon versions. They look enough like them, but the Playmates line was always a little different than the TV show. So I guess as independent pieces, they probably wouldn't get the recommendation, but because what they are, because these are vintage and vintage style Ninja Turtles, absolutely I recommend them. If you grew up with this stuff and you're a toy collector, you gotta have a set of them, whether it's the ones you had as a kid that are all banged up and nasty, which probably sitting in some storage unit for me somewhere. I'll have to go visit my mom and see if I could dig them out. Or if you go back and buy the re-releases or buy somebody else's childhood piece on eBay. So glad that I have this set of the Turtles. It's iconic, it's nostalgic, it's overall just awesome. Make sure you check me out on Instagram, username Outside the Box Reviews. Also check me out on Facebook, link below. And until next time, this has been our Outside the Box Reviews. Go Ninja, go Ninja, go!